Good evening, everyone. My name is Martin Cooper, or Marty Cooper. I'm the Community Relations Director. Before I make my remarks, I want to recognize many community leaders who came this evening. Council President Michael Solomon, Marion Ross, Brett Smiley, Ken Block, Attorney General Peter Gilmartin, Senator Josh Miller, Senator Gail Golden, Jorge Elorza, and Cormac Lynn. In my remarks, I started off by saying we have over 300 people here tonight. I'm going to amend that. We have over 400 people here tonight in this town. This means we probably have close to 800 different opinions about Israel in regard to the current crisis. Yet, and as we gather in this room, we share one common reason to be here. That is to show our solidarity for Israel and the people of Israel. During a recent Community Relations Council program, we invited 3 participants to take part of a panel. We asked them all sorts of questions in regards to Israel and its role in bringing peace to the Middle East. Upon the conclusion of the program, a question was asked. If there was one takeaway from this discussion tonight, what would that be? One panelist replied, the Jewish community may have several opinions about Israel. We may agree to disagree on a number of issues in regard to Israel. But that's okay. It shows we care and we love Israel and its people. A couple of years ago, when I first got this position as director of the CRC, of the then Federation in Howard Island, the Israel and Gaza war broke out. It was called Operation Cast Lead. I believe that many of you are familiar with that war. I had just returned from my first and only visit to Israel. But during that time, I met former Israeli emissaries to Rhode Island and had time to rekindle old friendships. Operation Cast Lead was my first experience with Israel and its hostile neighbors. It was also my first time as a professional member of the Jewish community to witness these differences of opinion from various factions of the Rhode Island community. I remember hoping that this war would be the last crisis Israel would be faced with for years to come. I prayed that I would never experience the amount of pain and suffering the people of Israel and Gaza endured. I prayed for them, and I prayed for us. Since that time, Israel and Gaza have had 2 further wars. In each instance, it was on the account of rockets fired from Gaza. These rockets were fired indiscriminately at Israel. The rockets fired from Gaza during each war traveled further into the heartland of Israel. And like years prior, I again prayed, this time for a ceasefire, a true, everlasting ceasefire that would one day lead us all to peace. This morning, the Providence Journal published a wonderful editorial. It's called Israel in Gaza. They also published, in the same edition, right underneath it, another editorial that came from the Journal Inquirer in Manchester, Connecticut. Again, I encourage you to read it. It starts out, as the attempted Gaza truce falls apart, we must remember the difference in value judgment between the 2 parties. If you throw out the newspaper, you could get it online. You may agree or disagree with what the journal published today. but I'm going to encourage you to write a letter to the editor of the Providence Journal voicing your opinion. Over the next few days, you will read articles, editorials, columns, hear stories both criticizing and in support of Israel. Please let your feelings and concerns be heard. Voice them, as I said, in letters to the editor. Voice them through social media. Throughout the evening and in your program, there's a hashtag. I believe it says hashtag silence.
Stand with
Stop
Israel.
the sirens.
The silence. I'm sorry. It says that, all right. I encourage you, if you go on Facebook or if you go on Twitter, to please, even now, while I am talking, to let people know your honest feelings about what is going on in this room, as well as in Israel and Gaza. However, the takeaway tonight is be informed of what is going on in Israel. In your program, there is a listing of various ways to garner greater understanding of the present situation. For instance, there's the website that will take you to the IDF, a website that will take you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I believe there's JPost, which is the Jerusalem Post. There's Times of Israel. There's several. Please take a moment and learn about the situation. On your way home tonight, I ask you to think about why we held this rally. Then I want you to consider how you may personally communicate with others as to why Israel must defend itself, why Israel has a right to be a Jewish state, and how we can make the lives of our friends, family, living in Israel safe, secure, and most importantly, free. Thank you.